that a number of people went to the Rapides Parish Police Jury, and the police jury, over the last several months, this committee worked extensively, and Mr. Jones is going to go into the details. The committee came up with its recommendations after many public meetings and public participation. The recommendations were made. Mr. Jones is going to explain that the format is very similar to what they do in Monroe, West Monroe, and Washita Parish. With that, I'm going to ask if Mr. Jones would come up. We understand yesterday the Rapides Parish Police Jury adopted its ordinance. That's why it's brought before y'all this evening. The ordinance includes a new Rapides Parish ordinance that will relate to ambulance providers, service providers, and also there's a request for proposals. The intention is for the municipalities to have an opportunity to express their interest in joining in this at this time. No one has been selected, and the RFP process is just fixing to begin if that's what we're going to do. But with that, I would ask if Mr. Jones would come up, and he'll give you a timely explanation of the status and the legal circumstance.
Thank you, Mr. Gist. I'd like to start out by thanking the mayor and the city council for your participation in this process. It's a service that's critical to Rapides Parish and all of our municipalities. Mr. Gist and Ms. McGills have attended every meeting. They've been instrumental in our discussions. They've brought forth issues that were of vital interest to the city and the urban areas that were ended up being incorporated in these ordinances. And like Mr. Gift said, the police jury met yesterday and approved their new ordinances unanimously. I want to say a couple of things. Dr. Paul Coryell, the chancellor at LSUA, has been the committee chairman. He's done an excellent job. He's been out of state the last few days. He wanted to be at the meeting. He could not get back in time. He'll be in time tonight. He asked me if I would make an appearance, and like I said, we have Mr. Gist introduced. We have the 911 director and Chief Basco, and your fire chief, Mr. Allen, was present for every meeting and had a lot of input too, because as you well know, they operate with EMTs, which is part of the ambulance process. The committee members, and you should have a list in front of you, you will see that the committee that we put together, we wanted it to be a broad representation of the parish and a community effort and involve the people that are actually on the ground, hands-on with ambulance service. The Brent Hospital sent one of their COO, the Rapides Regional, sent their trauma program director. The city sent your fire chief. City of Pineville sent Chief Basco, who's now their Office of Administration director. Town of Glenmore sent their fire chief. Town of Ball sent a retired EMT who actually had service out of state riding on ambulances and responding to emergency and non-emergency calls. The nursing homes had a representative. We had the 911 director. Chief Glorioso from Fire District 2 was our appointee. The school board sent their trauma control representative because they're hopefully not too often, but occasionally involved in ambulance calls. So it was an excellent group. All of the meetings were subject to the open meetings law, and that's how they were conducted. Mr. Cornelius came and spoke at several of the meetings. We had a lot of citizen input at every meeting. Some wanted to talk about multi-provider versus sole provider. Some wanted to talk about particular providers, but it all went very, very well. And most of the ambulance companies that are interested in submitting a proposal were present. We know as of right now, we have 4 ambulance companies that have already advised us that they will be submitting a proposal when the RFP goes out. In addition, the committee took it a step further. As you know, we're only required to advertise in the Town Talk as the official journal, but we're actually going to go out and advertise it in every major newspaper in the state. Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Lake Charles, which are most all organic owned, Lafayette, Shreveport, and Monroe. Every committee member was started out with a book this thick, which comprised the existing contract, the existing ordinances, the old RFP from 20 years ago, as well as the Ouachita Parish ordinances and a couple of other parishes that we had looked at. And let me say that in reference to Ouachita Parish. They went through this process about 5 years ago. And they went through it with an advisory committee similar to what we had. They came up with a great set of ordinances. Their assistant DA, who handled that and still works with that, came down and spent about 2 hours with us at one committee meeting, fielding all types of questions from the public and from the committee members. Ouachita Parish had actually 5 years ago been a multi-provider parish. And at the end of their process, they went to sole provider for emergency and non-emergency like we have today. But they amended their ordinances to put a lot of teeth in accountability and oversight of those operations. And I can tell you that we've been meeting since June, and that is the main point that the committee came to after multiple meetings, comments provided providers, Ouachita Parish representatives, comments from citizens, that our main problem in Rapides Parish is not multi versus sole. Our main problem is lack of oversight and accountability. That's the main problem that we're facing right now, and that's the main problem that they focused on to try to cure. Before we go through it in detail, I'll give you just a brief summary of some of the new ordinance requirements. If you'll look at number one, you should have these in front of you, I'm advised. Number one is going to be Exhibit A, which is a new zoning map for Rapides Parish. It's color-coded, green, yellow, and red. The only zone we had existing was for the urban areas and response times. Ouachita Parish is very similar to us geographic. They have a major river that divides their parish. They have two urban centers, one on each side. Geographically and population, they're very similar to Rapides Parish. What we did was we took their map, we had the Rapides Area Planning Commission study it, and bring us a similar version back that's basically drawn along highway lines or parish road lines. We actually have a better parish road system than Ouachita Parish does. That was discussed and tweaked at two committee meetings with input from the ambulance providers. And we came back, this was the final version you see in front of you. You'll see on the right-hand side, EMS Zone 911 calls. That's for the emergency calls. Zone 1 is 8 minutes or less. Zone 2, 12 minutes or less. And Zone 3 is 20 minutes or less. Now, I realize the red area looks like a big area to cover in 20 minutes, but what the providers, the insight they gave us, it's all in where you station your ambulances to be able to properly respond to these time zones. The other thing we did for the urban area, which is mostly Alexandria, the green zone, we've upped the compliance rate from 80% to 90%, okay? What the committee felt like was if we're going to put it out again as a sole provider for emergency and non-emergency, then we're going to demand the best service that we can get. And everybody was on board with that. In fact, when we actually had a vote before we began drafting the new ordinances as to whether we should continue with sole provider or whether it should be multi-provider. After 5 months of meeting, it was a unanimous vote that we continue with sole provider, but that we needed to beef up the accountability process, okay? There's going to be some changes to the administration of how the services are administered from an oversight standpoint. We're going to take the advisory committee and downsize it to a 7-member committee called the Ambulance Services Advisory Board, okay? And we'll go through who all is going to be on that board in just a moment. But it's going to be a 7-member board. That board is going to have the authority to also hire a contract administrator, whether it be full-time or part-time. That advisory board will decide what that's going to be. And that will be a point of contact for complaints and to handle the day-to-day oversight of the ambulance calls and the monthly response times reports. Because right now, the response time reports we get are not very detailed. Okay, they're going to be detailed too, because now we're going to have non-emergency transport response times as well. There are financial penalties that are built into the new ordinances should the provider violate the ordinance or the contract. There will also be, depending on the severity of the violation, it could result in the ultimate penalty of termination of the contract. Okay. There is going to be, we're creating, as of yesterday, a separate parish ambulance committee. Previously, on our committee system, we had 3 or 4 subjects rolled into one committee. That's where ambulance was stuck, didn't get much attention. We are creating a separate standalone committee that will work with the advisory board, can meet at any time it wants to call a meeting, and can report to the full jury. So there will be an advisory, a contract administrator, and an advisory board. There will be a separate ambulance committee, and then the police jury itself. When we get to the RFP, Ouachita had a scoring system, a very good request for proposal. It had 13 categories. The maximum number of points you could score would be 160 points. We tweaked it a little bit and added 2 categories that we thought were pertinent to Rapides Parish. Ours will be 15 categories. The maximum number of points that you can score will be 180 points. Okay. So if you want to now, we can turn and look at the ordinances themselves. I believe that your legal counsel has provided you kind of a fact cover sheet that discusses the impact of Title 33, 479.1. And as I discussed with the committee, and I discussed this with the jury as well, because you hear a lot from the public and we hear a lot in our meetings about this is America, this is competition. Competition breeds excellence, competition breeds competitive rates. Well, for the most part, that's incorporated by state law. That's why we have public bidding. That's why we encourage competition. Some of our franchise ordinances that you guys use and that we use at the parish, like for electric utilities and for cable TV, it's called a franchise, and we award a franchise agreement, but the statute specifically says non-exclusive. You give them a franchise, you can charge a fee, but it's not exclusive. Somebody else wants to come in and compete. When the legislature drafted 33-479 back in 1986, they recognized that there are sections of this state where if you want excellent ambulance services, you're going to request certain assets be placed on the ground in your vicinity. Helicopter service, substations, rural and urban, certain number of ambulances, certain number of personnel to comply with the response time zones you had, and that it may be a situation where to entice any provider to put that substructure in your parish or in your urban area, you're going to have to do a sole provider contract so that they can earn their money back. Another thing that we learned in relation to that, we learned that, and Ouachita Parish really brought this home to us, On the emergency side, for the emergency calls for ambulance service, a lot of those calls often go unpaid, okay? If you have Medicare, Medicaid, health insurance, they're going to get paid, even if it's at a staggered rate. But they're required by law once they initiate that call. That's an emergency response under the EMTALA Act, and they have got to transport that patient, even though later on they may not be paid. The gravy, and this is what the Washita people called it, the gravy is on the non-emergency transport, because you're going to be paid on every one of those. Okay? They're going to have some type of remuneration to pay you, whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, cash, health insurance. They're going to get paid on that. And it balances out, if that makes sense. Okay? So that was another point that the committee thought was very important in drafting just that. And I might mention that out of 4 providers that provided input, 3 said they were much in favor of the sole provider system. There was only 1 that said they would like to see a multi-provider system. Okay. All right. If we can turn to
Greg, of the 4 interested, did you just say that the actual interested parties to provide 3 of 4 wanted it sold?
3 wanted sold.
3 of 4.
3 or 4. Only 1 spoke that they would prefer to see it multi. Even though, but, and let me add a caveat to that, the 1 that spoke that they would like to see it multi admitted that in some areas they're the sole. Okay? So, I guess different reasons drive different businesses' decisions in different areas. They thought in this area they'd like to be the multi, but they admitted that in other areas they're the sole. In some other areas.
Mr. Jones, I got one quick question.
Yes, sir,
You're
Mr.
going
Walker.
over all the fines and penalties that are placed on the sole provider. Who will enforce that, one thing? And who will enforce other people, stopping other people from doing business that are on the sole supplier?
Well, the ordinance sets up a sole provider system.
Yeah, I understand.
So if another provider is caught in violation of it, then, of course, the police jury can initiate civil actions. As a matter of fact, occasionally now, if a complaint is brought to me, I have to write what's called a cease and desist letter. Hey, I understand you made a call over here and you made an emergency call and you're not authorized to do that, although there's not that much teeth in it, okay? Now, let me say this also about calls. We can only govern calls, emergency calls or non-emergency, that initiate in Rapides Parish, and we cover that in ordinances. In other words, LaSalle Parish or Avoyelles Parish, they have their own providers. If one of their providers initiates a call in Avoyelles Parish, since our hospitals are centrally located for 7 parishes, they can make that delivery here.
Right.
And they're not in violation of our ordinance. It's because the call originated outside of Rapides Parish. And that's how each parish operates. That's not unique to us. They can't regulate a call that initiates somewhere else. Because Shreveport and Lake Charles are very similar to us. They service a 6 to 7 parish area because that's the largest and nearest hospital with the specialist. Okay. If we can look at the draft of the ordinances on page 1, it's just kind of an introduction, and we specifically mentioned some of the provisions of Title 33, 4791 that allow us to do basically a sole provider system for both emergency and non-emergency. Pages 2 and 3 are basically define medical terms as what is emergency transport, what's not emergency transport. And most of these definitions, honestly, came out of Washita Parish. If you'll look at page 7, you'll see at the top, section 6.16, that's call response measurements. This is where I mentioned we've increased the compliance rate to 90% within Zone 1, which is on Exhibit A. Zone 1 is the green zone, basically being the urban areas. Zone 1 was tweaked a little bit by the committee after much debate and listening to provider input. We thought, and one of the providers agreed that we could extend Zone 1 down Highway 165 north to about where Ball Town Hall is. We could take it south to about where Woodward Town Hall is, and we could take it down 167 to LSUA, and they could still manage an eight-minute compliance time there again, based upon where they locate their substations. And in our ordinances, we have response times, we have preferences, but we left that to them as a business decision that they're going to, each provider will cover in their proposal how they intend to handle that. You will see subsection E on page 7. Elapsed time measurement begins when the call received time and ends when an assigned ambulance unit capable of ALS transport declares itself on the scene at the assigned location or staging area. What that was intended to cover is you can't just, when you're calculating your response time, you can't just send any vehicle to the site. Your response time begins when that ambulance arrives at the site, because the ambulance is the mobile trauma treatment center, okay? So just because you send one of your company trucks with somebody driving it, you can't calculate your response times from the ride of that truck. Your response time is calculated when that ambulance arrives. That makes sense to everybody? Okay. All right. Let's see. I'll take you over to page 13. This is the Rapides Parish Ambulance Service Advisory Board. Section 2 states that there will be 7 members. 1 will be the Chancellor of Louisiana State University or his or her designee. 2 would be an appointment from the Mayor of the City of Alexandria, the Mayor of the City of Pineville, preferably an appointment with emergency medical services, but that's not mandatory. We leave that to the mayors. 3 is the Chief Executive Officer of each of the medical centers. Ouachita actually had 3 listed. We only have 2 local that are major trauma centers. That's Rapides Regional and Christus St. Francis Cabrini. So their CEOs will each have an appointment. And then 4, the President of Rapides Parish Police Jury shall have 1 appointment in the rural area on the south side of the river and 1 appointment in the rural area on the north side of the river, preferably a mayor, a mayor's designee, or a fire district chief. Again, that's not mandatory. That's just a preference reference. If you'll look on page 15, you'll see section 9, legal representation. This is mentioned where, and there was some, we went back and forth on this a little bit, and we finally decided that, number 1, the advisory board needs their own legal representation, but number 2, if they determine that that attorney can also serve as the contract administrator, we left them that discretion. It's how Ouachita handles it, and it was explained to us why they handle it that way, because having legal representation for the board, which are the initial hearings on contract violations or ordinance violations, when it gets up to the police jury level, that's almost an appeal of what the board is recommending. So the police jury attorney and the police jury are both hearing that for the first time themselves. You don't have the same attorney participating on both levels. And they said it worked well. I thought it was a good idea. I like that process myself. I wouldn't want to be participating at both levels with the advisory board, and then I'm participating with it again, and maybe would be claimed to be steering the jury. It'll be 2 sets of eyes and 2 sets of legal guidance, and it works well for them, and I think it would work well here. You'll notice And 10, duties of the advisory board, multiple duties that they're going to have oversight on. I'll point you to H. We'll hear any complaint of any person with reference to the provision of ambulance services in Rapides Parish. And we really anticipate putting this out on our website, asking all the municipalities that are participating to this contract administrator. They'll have their own website too, as well. They'll have an address. They'll have the email. So there will be multiple places that citizens can find the proper person to bring an ambulance service complaint to. Okay, which, again, we don't have that now. You know, we get a call at the front desk at the police jury office and try to handle it as best we can, but we do not have a board that should be vetting this before it comes to anybody. If you look on page 17, section 3 is contract fee for exclusive services. This, again, is a provision that Ouachita Parish have for a contract administrator and legal counsel. There are going to be expenses involved, and depending on how deep in the trenches hearings get, you could even be asked to call experts and to pay experts. So the sole provider is required to put up $45,000 annually by January 15th of each year, and that will cover all expenses that are related to the regulation of the ordinances and the contract. Okay. We didn't feel like it was fair for the parish or any of the municipalities to have to pay themselves for that oversight. That should be a deposit, and Ouachita said it works well for them, you know, and that their elected officials liked it because they didn't want to be spending their own money. They could be spending on roads and drainage and other stuff, oversighting committee. Okay. Section 4 are some minimum requirements that we're going to have in place for the ambulance service. Some of these were from Ouachita Parish, and some of these we took the existing Rapides ordinances and included them, particularly number 2, which is helicopter service. That was a big item when these ordinances were first drafted almost 25 years ago for Rapides Parish, and a sole provider was awarded because we didn't have 24/7 required helicopter service. And so that was a big factor that went into it at that time, and it's still important to us. I'm sure most of you either know someone or have had a family member who's been flown from here to Oshner, or flown from here to Houston, or flown from here to somewhere where there's a specialist, and time is crucial that they get there if they're going to survive. Page 19, subsection G, emergency medical technicians. This was something else that was discussed at length. Every ambulance emergency call is going to be required to have a nationally registered paramedic or EMT on board. The fire districts, your fire department generally respond with their EMTs, but the problem is they're not authorized to ride that ambulance unless a special call is made and the company authorizes that, but then you're sharing the liability as well if you do that, okay? So we're not going to allow that. When you send that ambulance, it's got to be timely, it's got to be within the response times, and it's got to be an EMT or nationally certified paramedic on board, okay? Page 23, response time reports. Those are going to be much more detailed than they are now. They're going to include non-emergency response times. Page 25, subsection R is financial penalties. If there's a breach of the sole provider contract or these ordinances for first offense, a $2,500 penalty can be assessed. If there is a second or a subsequent offense within 12 months of the first, it could be a $5,000 penalty. And if you will look right below that, depending upon the severity of the contract breach, the contract may be considered for termination. Okay. We don't have anything like that in place now. Okay, it's kind of just a slap on the wrist, don't do that again now. Okay. If you'll turn over to page 29, you'll see Article 4, Sole Provider Ambulance Services License, Emergency and Non-Emergency. This is something that Ouachita Parish did not have, that Rapides Parish actually did have. We needed to update it and tweak it a little bit. So what we've done, we had a Class A license and a Class B. What we've done is the Class A license will be issued only to the sole provider, whoever has the sole provider contract. They'll pay a license fee of $2,000 a year. And what is in this subsection is what will be required of drivers or any other personnel that is riding upon or providing any kind of service in reference to that ambulance call, including a performance bond requirement and an insurance requirement. On page 38, Article 5, these are Class B licenses. Let me talk a little bit about that. One thing that we realized in all these meetings is that the parish, just like any other urban center with hospitals, we have multiple medical transport companies. You see them all over the city. They generally have just a magnetic sign on the side or on the back. Although that's a non-emergency call, it is a medical transportation call, and it's generally to just a doctor's visit. We're not tracking them. We don't know who they are. We don't know if they're insured. We don't know if they're registered. We do know of them if they have an occupational license from the Sales and Use Tax Office. The health unit does know some of them that are registered, but we have no oversight and no master list. So what we've done with the Class B licenses, we're going to track and monitor those too. It's going to be $250 for an annual permit for your Class B license. You'll have to provide your insurance coverage and everything as part of your application for your permit. Then we will have a master list. And at the same time, citizens who have grievances with one of those types of transports will also be allowed to come to the Ambulance Advisory Board. Currently, they don't have anywhere to go, okay? So we felt like if we're going to have an advisory board and we're going to cover medical transport, then we ought to issue the Class B licenses to these folks. And it's not that intrusive, but we will know who they are. We will know who's operating them. We will know who's insured, and their customers, who are our citizens, will have somewhere to go if they have a complaint. I mean, you know, if you call one of these folks to come pick you up at 9 a.m. because you've got a 10 a.m. doctor's appointment and they get there at 11 to pick you up, well, there's no need to pick you up. You know, you're too late, but there's nobody governing that right now. Okay, if I could talk to you a moment about the request for proposal, which you should have in front of you. It's Rapides Parish Request for Proposals, RFP number blank, Emergency and Non-Emergency Ambulance Service. The first couple of pages are just general provisions, but I will tell you that once we set the deadlines to fill in these blanks, we anticipate there's going to be a minimum of a 30-day period to get it advertised and allowed. We may actually go a little more than that for the proposals to come in. But we're also going to have a pre-bid conference at the courthouse for any ambulance service providers that are interested in a proposal, that they can come, and if they have any questions or they need clarification on the ordinances or on the proposal itself, We'll answer those questions, and that'll assist them in putting together their RFPs to submit by the deadline that we set. If you'll turn over to page 4, section 3, topics that must be addressed in each bidder's proposal. You will see that is where the 15 categories begin. And if you'll turn to your very back page, you'll see a scoring summary that lists all of the categories. They are services offered to the parish and municipalities, compliance, administration and leadership, strategic planning and data collection, standard of care and continuous quality improvement, human resources, what your fleet and equipment will be, your communications network, customer and market focus, experience, financial position, and readiness to serve, proposed price with cost controls, time required for ramp up to full compliance, paramedics on ambulances, compliance with parish ordinances, any other additional information. Each section will be scored separately by our committee members. The maximum number of points you can score will be 180. Once the RFPs are received, they'll be distributed to each of the committee members. They will score those independently in private. They will turn those score sheets into the parish treasurer. The parish treasurer will calculate. We'll call a public meeting. At that meeting, the parish treasurer will report the hierarchy of the scores, who fell where, for the committee to consider and vote and make a recommendation to go up to the police jury. Let me say one thing about communications section here. And that's one reason I invited Ms. Branton, our 911 director. It was very important in Ouachita, and one of their primary factors in moving from multiple provider to single provider is the situation of 911 call-outs and who to call out. Okay. That was a big factor in remaining with the sole provider system. Those emergency calls have got to go through someone, and they have to know who to call. They can't be picking and choosing. Doing some research on this and talking to Sheriff Hilton and some of the others that were involved 25 years ago, we didn't govern that at all, and there were actually 3 or 4 small ambulance services in the parish that may or may not respond to a call. And what was going on, in some instances, they would get to a residence if there's a family emergency call and the family bickers over, well, what ambulance service do we call? Or they get to an accident scene and the law enforcement is bickering over which ambulance service do we call, okay? So provider takes all that out. Yeah, there's no time lost in picking and choosing which ambulance service to call. 911, once it's reported to them, they know who to call. Okay. Now, let me say this. We anticipate in the contract that there will be discussions and contract provisions that in situations, they now have a zoning map and they know what the response times are. In situations where they receive an emergency, particularly an emergency transport call, we understand if they're 3 ambulances in that area are already on an emergency transport call. But in that situation, if there's another ambulance service in the parish, that should immediately go to a backup call. Does that make sense? Don't promise you're going to respond to that call in the 8-minute lapse or the 12-minute lapse when you know logistically that is impossible. And it should be the same way on non-emergency calls. You'll look on the new zoning map. If you look on the left-hand side, we have non-EMS response times and 2 categories: non-emergency transports from a hospital to a healthcare facility, or emergency transports from hospital to hospital, because the hospital CEOs told us that that occasionally does happen because, for a couple of reasons. One is the specialist that's covered by your provider network, he's not at Rapides, he's at Cabrini. So they got to take you over there. Or if it's an emergency where it really doesn't matter about a provider network, it's still, that specialist may not be on duty at Rapides, but he is on duty over at Cabrini, and they've got to make that transfer. But then some of those calls, non-emergency calls, are simply a discharged patient who's not completely well. He still has a situation where he needs an ambulance transport to his house to get set up. And, you know, we had some situations brought to us where the patient's discharged on an afternoon, call for an ambulance. The next morning, the patient's still there, waiting to be transported home because the hospital's telling him, we have to send you home in an ambulance and you can't leave with a family member. You got to leave here in an ambulance. Okay, so we've got some times on that, you know. Now, let me say that also that the ordinances are replete with exemptions. If we have a national emergency weather service, and a hurricane, traffic on all three bridges, there are excuses where you're going to run afoul of your response time, okay? But those are excuses and exemptions that the provider can bring to the hearing at the ambulance advisory board and say, look, here's why we didn't, here's why we were 12 minutes instead of 8 minutes. And the board can verify that. Can I answer any other questions?
Sounds very thorough to me.
Well,
Put your homework in.
Ms. Rubin,
Sounds like
it's
you've
got
done
a
good
lot of
job.
teeth in it, and
Yeah.
teeth is what we're missing at the moment. And teeth, it's also required, the ambulance advisory board, probably the first year, they'll be meeting monthly. Thereafter, it's required that they meet quarterly or any time that contract administrator, he has the authority to call a board meeting within 24 hours. Just as long as he follows open meetings.
Class B operators be subject to fine as well if they don't.
Yes, $500 fine if they're in violation of the ordinances. In other words, if they've got an uncertified driver driving, if they got a lapse of insurance, if they're running afoul of their times, if they should be delivering the patients timely for their appointments, it's up to $500.
What kind of response time do they have?
Sir?
Do you have a set response time for them?
No, we didn't make a response time to them because they operate on a different system. When you schedule it, they're supposed to be dropping you off somewhere at a certain time, and when they agree to do that, that's their response time. Yeah. Well, I certainly appreciate you folks allowing me to address you and participating in the process. And again, I just want to thank Mr. Gist, Mr. McGills, Chief Allen for their participation in it. It's been truly a Herculean community effort, but I think we've gotten all the input that we could get from citizens and providers and other public entities. And, it's like I told the police jury yesterday when we voted, which by the way was a unanimous vote to adopt these ordinances and stay with sole provider. I said, today, look, we're not voting on any provider in particular today. We're voting on improving our ordinances for accountability to improve the service to the people of Rapides Parish, and probably late January we'll be getting to voting on a particular provider. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Jones, thank you much.
Oh, and I wanted to say, you guys, I reviewed y'all's ordinance. It's great. You've got what I call a safety clause, whereas if you think the system's not working well, once it's in place, then you just vote to remove yourself from it. It's very simple.
We thought that was important. It wasn't in the prior ordinances. So the contract with the provider will will require an acknowledgement of the city's right and reservation to withdraw authorization for participation in ambulance service contracts if the police jury fails to enforce the contract. We thought that was an important, gave us some teeth, gave people on the council the right to, if you get complaints that the police jury is not carrying forth what is supposed to happen, that the city has in advance reserved the right, and it gives notice that it will seek some withdrawal at its sole discretion. And we thought that was an important provision to give to the council and the administration. And with that, I think we've kind of given you the highlights of what's going on. You have before you in your books the proposed ambulance ordinance for consideration by the city council, as well as the zone map from the parish ordinance, and the parish RFP process. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have a motion to, so moved. I'll second it. Send that on to the full council. And we'll take item B again, Mr. Fowler, or item 2, excuse me.
Item 2 is consider final adoption of an ordinance to declare surplus a certain city-owned 8.231 acre tract, parcel and lot of ground together with improvements located adjacent to Industrial Port Road, being a portion of tract B1 as per plat recorded in Plat Book 30 and page 63 of records of Rapides Parish, situated in section 10 and 11, Township 4 North, Range 1 West, Southwestern Land District, City of Alexandria, authorizing an appraisal of properties to authorize the mayor on behalf of the city to sell the 8.231 acre tract to the Central Louisiana Regional Port for a fair market value and a minimum price of $20,776 per acre, authorizing the mayor to exclude agreements, including active sale with the port under reasonable terms and conditions, authorizing the mayor to execute related agreements with third parties, further authorizing the mayor to grant servitudes and related rights and agreements with Central Louisiana Regional Port related to the sale and transaction, and otherwise authorizing the mayor to execute related agreements to enable the city to sell property declared surplus and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Item 15 in our book.
If it please the council, this item is to authorize the administration to continue what has been an ongoing negotiation, principally through Ben Russo over at the port, Ms. McGill's, Mr. Gist, and then principally on my staff, Mr. Rick Ranson, who have been talking to the port about the need to expand in an area and create the opportunity for an economic development prospect that they're interested in seeing there. Much like some of what you just heard in the ambulance ordinance, which they call teeth. I tend to call it clawbacks. We will be working on our clawbacks, if you will, in that contract over the next period of time, meaning this is some of the last property, if not the last, that the city proper has in that port, which was started by the city. Several years ago, the legislature saw fit to regionalize the port. I personally do not think that regionalizing it didn't add a lot of value yet. I hope it continues to offer that. But Alexandria's always had the assets there and a lot of things that we partner with. We're the ones who are responsible, after all, for roads and all those other connections. No one else is offering us any contribution. So before you give up your last piece, we want to make sure of a couple of things. So here'd be an idea on those clawbacks that we would still negotiate before doing it. One, we're going to negotiate in a right of first refusal so that this council and the council that's about to come on would have the right, if they don't go forward with the prospect, they don't just get it. Then you would have some rights to come back and say, okay, we may have a different prospect we want to use it for. So it's prospect specific. It's not just giving up your last piece of property for nothing. It's got to be prospect specific. Number two, they have to develop the prospect and complete, make the deal within a certain amount of time, or again, we would have some reversionary language in it. And that's also important, because you're not just trying to get rid of it and then let someone sit on it. If it's going to be sat on, I have some ideas about that, and I'll go over that in 1 second. And then we would have those other ones. One of the big issues that we would have is it being that last piece. We want to make sure that we have the room to negotiate any rights of way and all those things that you see also listed in the ordinance. We want to make sure that it is, again, dedicated to that prospect and what they claim to do. We want to make sure there are some deliverables there. What is this prospect going to create? The opportunity for jobs, the creation of value-added wealth in our area. So all of that is important. The reason I think more than ever having some kind of clawbacks, if you will, or teeth in this, is because I think that in the last few years, we didn't negotiate it, and I'm not sure what all you knew about it, but there were some changes made to the rail spur. We had worked in this administration before, prior to really rebuild and make that rail spur something that allowed for additional commercial activity. That rail spur has moved into a control situation where it is doing the opposite. And so we want to make sure that we get some ability to negotiate in this back. I will tell you that if there's anything in government where you're at a low watermark of power and negotiating strength, it's with the railroad. So a railroad as a private industry is unique, and it goes back decades. And railroads are given almost plenary authority to do what they will with that set of track and those cross ties, regardless of what Congress or anyone else says. So the only guy I ever saw beat him was Judge Trimble when he wanted that project done right over here quicker. They seem to react to a federal judge a little more than most. So with that, we would commit to your favorable passage this ordinance. This does not do the deal. This authorizes us to declare the surplus and negotiate. We'll keep you abreast of that. We will make sure Ms. McGills knows, and she feels the same way. We both feel very strongly about the reversionary clauses, that if the development is not done in time, if something changes materially, anything like that, we have the right to say no deal, and we have the right to get it back if in an amount of time the deal doesn't make. So it doesn't mean we'll do it. It means this authorizes us to complete that final leg of diligence. I'll answer any questions you have.
Any questions? Moved, and I'll second. So this will go on to the full.
Number 3 is to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract to purchase a 106.66 by 106.66 site tract or parcel of ground located at 6th Street and DeSoto Street from the Seth LLC and otherwise providing with respect thereto. It's item 13.
So we have an explanation on that one.
The fact sheet, hold on, I'm getting to it. So this is the parking lot over where, what was the name of the building again?
Kilpatrick.
So Kilpatrick.
Insurance.
Everybody, so think of the courthouse, sort of directly over in the courthouse vicinity where the federal and the parish courthouses are. The Kilpatrick building is on that side street. It's directly across from the little restaurant, Word of Mouth. The Kilpatrick building's been, economically viable for many, many years. Some changes happened in the family. They are moving some of that out. We actually were looking at the building as an extension at one time of customer service and including expansion of our offerings to our employees and others for our clinic. There has been, for about a year and a half, we've been working on expanding the clinic with some parish options and other law enforcement, slow going, but getting there. Some have talked about joining, and we thought about we would move some of that activity there. We're also, as you know, running into problems in this building with roof and water leaks and so forth that may call for people to have to move somewhere, but we decided to hold off on that. We're not wanting the building yet It is for sale. We do think that the parking lots associated, that lot associated, we ought to pick up quick. We always have an issue with this in downtown parking. We always have an issue from time to time if there's an out-of-town owner that decides they're not going to stay in commercial activity in a building and they have a lot associated. We can't make a deal to get that lot. We're not talking about local, talking about out-of-town. And the school, CLTCC and LSUA's promised to do what it's doing, and we're a big part of that as a matter of $3 billion in funding. We want to make sure that we have plenty of lot space in downtown that the public has available to either work out a deal in a cooperative endeavor with private folks or in an IGA with other government folks who may need it. But what we don't want to do is see, so it's kind of like the port, someone pick that up or it sit and no one can ever use it and no one can ever work out a deal to use it. I've experienced this personally in some of the deals where we've tried to expand. If you think about Weiss's and all of that, you're going to need additional parking. We'd love to get the parking associated with this building. We have been very unsuccessful in any communications, so this would be one of the last lots. I'll let Ms. McGill's vouch on the price if she wants to add any comments to that. I don't know. I didn't work on that, but I do think from a policy matter, if this city can pick up parking downtown so that we can not hold it as government, but get it into commerce, help spur it into commerce, fix it, repair it, and get it back, we ought to do it. The next big problem you guys have, and maybe it's a Gator partnership at some point too, is the lot over by where the incubator was is terrible. And we unfortunately have some ownership in that lot. Y'all know what I'm talking about. They just built a new restaurant there. If you try to drive your car across that lot behind Smack and Max and all that, good luck. It's terrible. And the ownership of it is so convoluted and crazy. These are those things where I think we've got to really be smart, but where we can pick up a lot like this, we ought to think hard about it. So that's that. I'm going to ask Ms. McGills to comment on the methodology for a price, et cetera.
We negotiated the price of $115,000, but also we can use it as additional parking for employees in the customer service building.
Which you're out of
Moved
space.
additional employees over there, and the parking is a problem. So we have plenty of use for this.
And
lot.
that's determined by an appraisal, correct, Ms. McGills?
It is actually below the appraised price.
So you'd have it for your customer service building, whereas all of you know, if you go there to the utilities office or anything else there's already a bad parking problem. This provides opportunities. If the parish, if someone else needed it, another government entity or a private sector player came along, or a public entity like LSUA or CLTCC, we would be in a position to work on something with them. It is sort of land banking this lot, if you will, and while we should always be careful about the city owning new things to keep up, this is a declared need. There are parking studies that go all the way back to 08, 07, where we know this dearth of parking exists, and that has not changed. And we probably have less access to parking now than we ever have. So we would, again, commit it to favorable passage to sit on this lot and figure out what we want to do, but have that capacity available.
Any other discussion or thoughts on it? No. And I have a second. Okay, so that'll go on to the council, and that concludes our committee meeting.
Let's start in about 5 minutes. It's time to catch up to I'd like to call to order this Alexandria City Council meeting Tuesday, December 10th, 2024. City Council Chambers, 5 o'clock. Alexandria City Council meetings and council committee meetings are broadcast live and may be viewed live by the public on Optimum Channel, Cable Channel 4. A rebroadcast may be viewed on Optimum Cable Channel 4 and the City of Alexandria website at www.cityofalexandria.com, alexandrialouisiana.com. The invocation be said by Ms. Perry and the pledge said by Mr. Johnson. Please stand.
Bow your head, please. Father God, I thank you for allowing us to see another day. Lord, I ask that you put your arms around this city. I ask that you be with each and every one in this building tonight, Heavenly Father. I ask you to let us make decisions that are best for the city of Alexandria. In your holy name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Take the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Ms. Felter?
Here.
Ms. Perry?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Fowler?
Here.
Mr. Washington? Mr. Rubin?
Here.
Mr. Valor?
Here.
You have one.
E, approval of minutes taken from a regular meeting held on November 26, 24.
Move by Ms. Fowler,
Second.
second by Mr. Rubin.
We have one public comment, Mr. White.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Mr. Cornelius Lawson White Jr., 3638 10th Street, Alexandria, Louisiana, 71302. Phone number, area code 318-446-6934. Sorry, I missed the last meeting. Ms. Perry, I know you wasn't here for this last thing. If you can, I'd like to get the minutes from this past meeting, because I want to see what was going on there. And I'd like to get the minutes from the meeting when the speakers were cut off and see that work order to find out what was wrong. So thank you, I appreciate you.
Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. E, consent calendar. Introduction ordinance authorize the mayor to accept the low bid submitted for SWAT team building and waterproofing.
Move by Mr.
Second.
Fowler, second by Mr. Johnson.
Committee. G, resolution. Resolution canceling the regular council meeting scheduled for Tuesday, December 24th, 2024.
Move.
Moved by Ms. Felter,
Second.
second by Mr. Fowler.
Discussion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Have announcements. Item 5 and 14 through 14 will be delayed. 14 will be delayed and placed on a special council meeting notice on Thursday, December 12th, 2024 at 5 p.m. in the City Council chambers. Last week, the Town Talk advised the City Clerk, Ms. Jones, that the publication notice of introduction ordinances from November 26, 2024 meeting would not be published because of Thanksgiving holidays until December 4th, 2024. Publication requirements should be at least 7 days from the date of the publication, which would require a special call meeting for the above item. H,
When is that?
Thursday.
Thursday. H, ordinance for final adoption, subject to public hearing. Number 3, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept low bid submitted for Kisatchie 24-inch bypass Phase 1.
Moved by Mr. Fowler,
Second.
second by Mr. Rubin.
Discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You said 5 through, but what about 3 and 4?
No, 3 and 4 will be just 5 through 16, 5 through 15, through 14. These three will, these have already been, these have already
So
been.
then 3 through,
No, 5 through 14.
Ms. Felter, number 3 and 4 were on council agenda last meeting and properly noticed,
oh, okay.
as was item number 15. They had been
I
previously on agendas. The other matters do not meet the legal requirements.
Yes, okay, great.
We still gonna meet at 5?
Yes, sir.
Make sure.
4, to consider final, you vote on that? All in favor?
We did.
voted, okay.
We did.
4, consider final adoption of ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept the low bid submitted for spare parts for DG Hunter Units 5 through 11 for Wazilla Electric production engines and generations.
Moved by Mr. Fowler,
Second.
second by Mr. Rubin.
Public comment, Mr. Cornelius?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay, with all of this, will this help our utility bills? I know the mayor was showing his utility bill last week, or last time y'all met. So will this reduce our utility bill?
These are for parts.
That's parts for the
Yes, this-
DG Hunter?
Yes.
So it has nothing to do with your utilities?
Right.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Discussion, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 5, consider final adoption of, number 15, excuse me, 15. I got one. Consider final adoption of ordinance to declare surplus certain city-owned 8.231 acres tract, parcel, and lot of ground together with improvements located adjacent to Industrial Port Road, being a portion of Tract B1 as per plat recorded in Plat Book 30 and page 63 records of Rapides Parish, situated in the Section 10 and 11, Township 4 North, Range 1 West, Southwest Land District, City of Alexandria, authorizing an appraisal of properties, authorizing the mayor on behalf of the city to sell the 8.231 acres tract to Central Louisiana Regional Port for fair market value and a minimum price of $20,776 an acre. Authorize the mayor to execute agreements, including an active sale with the port under reasonable terms and conditions. Authorize the mayor to execute related agreements with the third parties. Further authorize the mayor to grant servitude and related rights in agreements with Central Louisiana Regional Ports related to the sale and transaction, and otherwise authorize the mayor to execute related agreements to enable the city to sell property declared surplus and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Moved by Mr. Fowler, second by Ms. Felter.
Discussion? I think we heard a great display of what this takes place, what's going to be taking place here. There's a lot of moving parts in this deal, and the mayor wants to make sure he puts clawbacks in the situation, so I think this is very well received.
Got a vote?
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, at this time, I'd like to recognize for the work for appreciation to Mr. Rubin here as a councilman at law from December 20th to December 24th for his dedicated service to the city of Alexandria. I'd like to personally thank him for all he's done for the city and wish him well on his next endeavors and hope his eye gets better. Thank you, brother.
Thank you very much. It has truly been a pleasure working with everyone up here and working for the citizens of Alexandria. I've enjoyed it. But I'm not going away. I'll be around. So anyhow, thank y'all very much.
Also, in appreciation, Mr. Capital R-E-D-D-E-X Washington. District 1 Council Member, December 2020 to December 2024, for your dedicated service to the citizens of Alexandria. I'd like to personally thank you for your service myself, and I know all the other councilmen feel the same. You've been a joy to work with, and really appreciate our time together. Thank you very much for your service.
Can we speak up?
Yes.
Oh, did you want me to say something?
Oh, I want to say something, no.
Imagine.
Well, I just wanted to say, by being the youngest as far as elected official up here, I enjoy working with Mr. Rubin, Reddicks, I tell you, brother, you know, when I was your age, I don't know if I had the stomach to do this. You came, you got a passion for what you do. You I don't know what your age is. I'm pretty sure you're close to my kids' age. My kids' age. But, you know, you keep that fire burning. And I tell people all the time, you don't have to be an elected official to do good for the city. You know, so you guys, both you guys have my number, and I'm still green, I'm still learning, and I'm just, we can be all right. But like I said, it's been a joy working with both of you, and keep your heads up and just keep driving forward, because this city needs all the help we can possibly get.
That's right.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just, I want to say thank you to everybody up here. It's been a roller coaster, and we've been steady going up, so it's been fun. Been a fun ride. I've learned a lot. I want to say to the backbone, Ms. Donna and Ms. Emily, thank you for everything that y'all do. Thank you, Ms. Donna, for keeping me in the rails. So,
Trying to keep him in the rails.
trying to keep me in the rails. So thank you, though, for being the backbone of this council. When we don't know, when I didn't know things, I won't speak for everybody else, but when I didn't know things, I was able to call you, and when you weren't there, I was able to call Miss Emily. So I just thank both of y'all, and thank everybody up here. And really, I thank the citizens of Alexandria. Being in this position has been fun, and it is not the end. Like you said, you don't have to be elected to affect the citizens and to be a help in your city. So I look forward to the next door that's opening up. So for everybody that's been following, stay tuned. There is more to come.
Okay.
One door closes, another window opens.
Hey, it didn't close. We still in it.
If anything else, this meeting's adjourned.